Literally, 40 minutes I'm trying to get through to somebody at the council to let them know in an hour I'm homeless with a 12-year-old.
Geraldine can measure her life by the walls of this house. The baby she brought home from hospital has grown with it, known nothing else. But now there is nothing else.
The bailiffs are there and the guy, the landlord's other half is across the road.
Her landlord is selling the house. Record high private rents have left Geraldine unable to find anything affordable. She'll be evicted at 10:30 and there the certainty ends.
I've got absolutely nowhere to go. It's just laughable and it's embarrassing as well. Look, everybody's about, everybody can see.
10:30 on the dot, and the home is no longer Geraldine's.
Hi, good morning. We're from the court, and we just wanted to know if you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Is everything? Do you need to come back for anything?
No.
And you do have 7 days before you
Yeah, no, I've cleaned everything out.
Oh, okay, good luck anyway.
Thank you.
A home of 13 years handed back with brutal efficiency.
Yeah, all clear upstairs.
The locksmith ensuring it stays that way. More than 330,000 households like Geraldine's qualified for council help after becoming homeless last year. That's up 22% since 2019. After failing to get through on the phone, she's come to the council building, but gets a call before going in.
Qualified. Hello?
It's the council. A flat with a private landlord, which she previously rejected because it had no heating or hot water, is still available.
So you're confirming that the heating and the hot water is now working?
But now, it's take it or leave it, and she has no choice.
Right, okay.
Across the country, homelessness of all kinds is rising. Street homelessness is up sharply, 164% since 2010. The government's promising to halve rough sleeping by the next election. Here in Greater Manchester, the Mayor promised to eradicate it entirely by 2020. Yet in the shadow of skyscrapers sit tents, 30 in this square alone. This man is from Eritrea. He's been granted legal status to live in the UK, but can't find anywhere to stay. It's an incredibly windy day.
Yeah, you can see this is wet.
This is wet here?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's soaking wet.
Even the rain is coming.
It's drenched.
Yeah.
How does it feel sleeping on the streets in a tent, in a wet tent like this?
It's very bad, but it's still surviving. You don't have option. Until I find a job, I don't have option. I have to stay like this.
After falling sharply, rough sleeping is rising here again. Mayor Andy Burnham says some government policies are not helping. Why are there tents scattered around the city centre when your policy is a bed every night?
I'm going to be honest and say, the task that we have faced has not been made any easier by the actions of the Home Office in recent times, evicting people with very, very short notice. And
you're talking about asylum seekers?
Yes, or people who've been given status but then are just literally evicted the next day, and unsurprisingly, they haven't got anywhere to go. So I kind of look back at my old workplace, Westminster. They pose as tough on benefits and, let's freeze local housing allowance. What I've seen in my role when those decisions are taken, it just builds the number of families who present as homeless.
So you're saying that the Labour government is contributing to homelessness?
Well, I'm doing what I've always done in this job. I'm speaking really clearly back to my old workplace, Westminster, in saying, here is how it seems from here. These are the things that you should fix. I think there is a clear case for a bed every night all over the country, or everyone in.
It has been freezing, so we've just literally sat with the heating on in the car.
Back in London, since being evicted 9 days ago, Geraldine has slept in her car while her daughter stays with her dad. She said the flat they were offered still did not have heating or hot water when she arrived. Today we met her in Westminster. The homelessness minister announcing the government's new strategy has agreed to hear her story.
I feel like I've been completely abandoned. So I've been working since I was 15. I've never done anything, I've never claimed anything until now, where I'm literally stuck in this loophole and I've been completely deserted. I've got to ask you, this morning, did you wake up in a nice cosy bed with your heating on? Did you have a toilet that was functioning?
I did, and every time I go home and shut the front door, I'm grateful. As a Member of Parliament, I've listened to people like yourself. And I think I'm really glad that you've told your story today, because a lot of people might see people rough sleeping and they might understand that, but do they actually understand some of the hidden homelessness in the country? So I'm really proud of you, Geraldine, that you've told your story today.
Why is it that under a Labour government, Geraldine and others are still being made homeless?
Because we've not got to the root causes of the problem, and that's what this new strategy resets. As Geraldine explained so clearly, we've got to build more homes, and we've set out a plan to do that. Getting children out of B&B accommodation is the thing that's keeping me awake at night at the moment, and also the rough sleeping challenge that we've talked about.
Nothing about this crisis can be fixed quickly, but right now time is something Geraldine does not have.
Well, Dan Hewitt is here. I mean, Geraldine, her story of her and her daughter was horrific, isn't it? But how far will the government drive actually go to tackling homelessness?
Speaking to housing charities, homelessness charities today, I'd say the feeling is pretty underwhelming. The government is putting more money in than the previous government, we have to say that. But Crisis, for instance, say that of this 3.5 billion the government have announced, they say that 3.4 billion of it has been announced in previous policies and sort of put together in this strategy. And others have told me that they see it less as a strategy and more as a series of pledges without much detail about how would you halve the number of rough sleepers. I think that also tells us something. The government isn't planning here to end rough sleeping, but halve it in the next 4 years when it's already incredibly high. The charities say it doesn't address the fundamental problems, a lack of housing for people to go, and the fact that housing benefit has been frozen, which means that people can't afford private rents. Andy Burnham makes that point. Now, people watching at home may say, well, we've got to see that in the context of his speculated leadership ambitions, but he's saying what lots of people have been saying in the sector for some time. It's worth saying tonight, for Geraldine, Bromley Council have told us that while they dispute some of the facts in this case, they have offered her suitable accommodation, and that accommodation does have now hot water and heating.
And here is Daniel Hewitt's full interview with the Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham.
2017, you come into office and you promise to look at rough sleeping, to end rough sleeping. Progress, quite obvious in the numbers.
Yep.
Clearly, though, I mean, walking around the city centre today, you can see tents, you can still see rough sleeping. Yep. How would you assess your success at promising to end rough sleeping?
I would assess it by saying, can we still, give an offer to people who are coming new to the street? And it may not come straight away, but largely we do. So we run a scheme called A Bed Every Night. Tonight, 600 people will be in it. And it just shows the level of need out there. But we sustain it every night via a range of contributions from the NHS here, some of our own funds at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, the Mayor's charity, which I set up, my own salary, I make a small donation every month. We try everything we can to sustain A Bed Every Night because we were never given a budget for it. And this is the point, I feel, as I look at it now, we should go back to what we did in the pandemic. Nationally, it should be everyone in every night, because I just think that is the right thing to do from a moral point of view. There's a moral case to do that. There is a financial case, because 1 or 2 nights on the street can mean 20 nights in a hospital bed. So it doesn't actually make sense from a public spending point of view. But there's also a fairness case. It's right that we give newly arrived people in the country accommodation. But then people say, well, how is that fair when we don't look after people who, obviously have fallen on hard times? And I would just say to the government, it's hard for us to sustain A Bed Every Night when not everywhere else does it, because some of the people that you will have seen today perhaps don't live here and they come here because we have a higher offer. I really feel the right thing to do as we go into the next phase of this Labour government is to go back to everyone in. That's what A Bed Every Night is, or what it's trying to be. It's harder for us to sustain it, though, when there isn't the funding in homelessness across the whole of the country.
So right now, do you not believe central government is funding you enough to tackle homelessness?
Well, we're putting more of our own funds in, and let's be fair, there's a commitment there. But I think it's preventative spending. As I said before, you spend more by leaving people in crisis. And that's not the right thing to do, but it's actually the costliest thing, because the chances are people will end up in A&E, in hospital beds, as I said, or in the criminal justice system in one way or another. Crisis estimated, the charity, that it costs around £20,000 for somebody to sleep rough a year. And when I worked it out, A Bed Every Night costs about 11 or 12,000 pounds. So why wouldn't we just do the right thing for everybody? And that's the appeal that I would make. This is prevention. The government is saying in its health plan, we need to go from treatment to prevention. Well, actually, ending rough sleeping is a major statement of going from treatment to prevention. And I think what we did in the pandemic should be a permanent approach.
But you do seem to be suggesting, though, that the government isn't supporting you on that you're making the case for everyone in, and there's some funding, but clearly you're saying here there isn't enough funding to do what you want to do from central government.
Well, we've had some funding.
But not enough. That's what you're saying.
It's not enough to pay for, a full everyone in approach. But I think the figures stack up to pay for a full everyone in approach all over the country. It's absolutely the right thing to do, the fair thing to do. Because as I say, just one night out can have catastrophic effects for people's physical health, but almost certainly their mental health. So it doesn't actually make sense. But what I would say is, for us as Greater Manchester, making the sort of voluntary contributions to a bed every night that we do raise, it does get harder to sustain it when other areas aren't doing the same, because it's clear that some people do come here looking for support, and we try our best to do it. But if this was a shared approach nationally, I think it would have quite significant benefits from certainly from a public health point of view, but also from a crime and safety point of view, also public savings as well, because leaving people in crisis is not good for anybody.
When you promised in 2017 to end rough sleeping, do you think you overpromised there? And you also think you underestimated how big the problem was and how complicated the problem was?
Well, I said we would aim to do it by 2020. And actually, if I go back to that period, we got the numbers right down. So coming into the end of 2019, going into 2020, we got those numbers down into double figures. And I said I would try and do it by then. And then what we were doing became national policy. Everyone in the pandemic was born out of what we were doing here in Greater Manchester. So in some ways, I kind of believe we did it in terms of what I originally said in that 2017 manifesto, and the kind of huge sort of response that came from people all across Greater Manchester, public, private, voluntary sectors, everyone pulling in the same direction. And we've sustained that ever since, and I bet every night's got bigger here, but we're the only ones doing it, it seems to me, and that's what I find hard. We'll never stop doing it. We believe here it's the right thing to do. As hard as it is to find the funds, we keep going at it, and we will always go at it. In my view, no one in this country should spend one night sleeping on our streets, and if they do spend one night, that's one too many. And that's the philosophy that we have. In the great scheme of things, it's a small amount of money up front that has very significant benefits for individuals, but for public services as well.
So when I walked through the city centre and we saw just off Albert Square 30 tents 10 minutes before I arrived here, and there's a bed every night policy. Why is there 30 tents there? Why are there tents scattered around the city centre when your policy is a bed every night?
So it's a complicated situation. That is linked. There has been a protest linked to that particular encampment, and Manchester City Council have been trying to deal with that through the court. So I don't think that is as it seems necessary. There is some other things at play there. There is a bigger picture behind that. But I'm going to be honest and say, the task that we have faced has not been made any easier by the actions of the Home Office in recent times. And often the Home Office will take decisions with no reference to what it means for councils at this level, or for what we're trying to do, evicting people with very, very short notice. And
you're talking about asylum seekers?
Yes, or people who've been given status but then are just literally evicted the next day, and unsurprisingly they haven't got anywhere to go. So we've said to them, you've got to take a better approach to these things. But that has been really frustrating. It began under the last government, and this government has made some moves to stop that. But it's still a difficult situation, and not things that we are able to control in the way that we would want to. So one of my learnings is the issues go way beyond if you like, Greater Manchester. If you take another issue, family homelessness, because it is also right to talk about families and children, particularly.
That's my next question, yeah.
In temporary accommodation. This is how I learn about the way the world works or doesn't work, particularly the Westminster world, because sometimes they pose as tough on benefits and let's freeze local housing allowance. What I've seen in my role when those decisions are taken, it just builds the number of families who present as homeless and then end up in temporary accommodation, which is terrible for those kids, terrible for those families, but also creates a bill that the councils haven't got a budget for. And it doesn't make any sense. And it does feel to me, as I kind of look back at my old workplace, Westminster, I don't think they are always really getting underneath the reality of what causes homelessness, what actually would put people on a path away from it and to recovery, and stop bringing through policies that actually create it, such as some of those changes in the benefit system, and particularly the repeated freeze on local housing allowance. All that means is, families in private rented accommodation see a growing gap between the rent they're being asked to pay and the level of support they're getting from the system, and it gets bigger to the point where they're made homeless and they have to present towards the council. It's something that, when you look at the world from my eyes, there are things Westminster could easily do to fix the homelessness crisis, and yet still we're waiting for them to be done.
The Labour government has frozen local housing allowance. Your party is in charge. It's just done that again. So you're saying that the Labour government is contributing to homelessness.
Well, I'm doing what I've always done in this job. I'm speaking really clearly back to my old workplace, Westminster, in saying, here is how it seems from here. These are the things that you should fix. I think there is a clear case for a bed every night all over the country, or everyone in, whatever you want to call it. I think it stacks up as the right thing to do, the fair thing to do, but also in the end helps create savings for public services. Similarly, not freezing local housing allowance, but letting it kind of keep pace with rents means that councils don't end up with an unfunded bill that they simply cannot afford. And we're taking action here, actually, using our devolution deal. We've recently passed a new policy at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority where we will be taking 400 empty homes across the city region and making them available to families and children in temporary accommodation. These are the decisions that we're taking through devolution, and we think we can do it while also making the numbers work because we can reduce the bill on the councils. But it does feel that we are having to work around some of the problems created for us by the Westminster system. And I'd say it to any government of any colour. When it comes to homelessness, to me, party politics doesn't come into it. You've got to just focus on what is the right thing to do. At this time of the year particularly, I don't think there should be anybody out there on our streets. I think as a society, we do have the ability to fix this problem. This is a fixable problem. And I feel this country needs to get back in the business of fixing things again that can be fixed.
So to be clear, we have a government releasing its national homelessness strategy. But from where you're sitting, what I'm hearing is you saying that the current government doesn't get it. It doesn't get how bad this is and actually isn't doing enough to tackle it. It's a straight question. Is this government doing enough to tackle homelessness?
I think they are doing a lot of good things. And I think they've made a big change in the spending review with regards to council and social housing. And Angela Rayner, I think, called for that. The budget came through, and that's a really positive thing. They have given us more funding for homelessness support, particularly employing social workers within the mix to help that recovery away from the street. So all of that is positive, and we have had more funding into our system. But what I am saying is, homelessness is fixable, but it requires something more radical if you really want to fix it. And if you go for that housing first approach, everyone in, a bed every night, those type of approaches, in the end, in my view, save money. And that's what I would encourage them to do. So I'm not saying they haven't done lots of good things. They have done lots of really important things. But from here, let's get into a more radical approach. People can't have anything in life without a good home. You can't have health. Your kids can't have a good education without a good home. If you give people a good home, a secure home, so much is possible from there, and you can set people up to succeed rather than paying through the system for the costs of social failure. And that, I think, is where we've got to get to as a country. We should follow Finland. We should adopt housing first as a national philosophy. We got it all wrong in the 1980s. We just started selling off council homes and social homes without replacing them. And that was a major mistake. And actually is one of the reasons why this country has struggled to get public spending under control, because we've been chasing rents through the benefit system since we lost all of those council homes and social homes. And I think we've got to kind of rethink our whole approach to housing. And it starts with a housing first philosophy. As I say, giving people that ability to have a social home or a council home that they can afford, but also intervening in the private rented sector to raise the standards, not accepting anymore that we allow people to rent out homes funded often by the benefit system, homes that are harmful to people's health, unfit for habitation. We shouldn't even allow that to happen. And in my view, people like myself and the councils here, we should have more powers of compulsory purchase to bring those unfit homes out of the private rented sector back into the social and council stock.
Can I ask you on the council and social stock? So you referenced the increase in funding for affordable homes, the Affordable Homes Programme. I mean, this government has made a much bigger commitment than the Tories ever did, and over a longer period, the 39 billion over 10 years rather than over 5. It will, though, only lead, and I say only, it will lead to around 300,000 social homes over 10 years. In your view, is that enough? Do you not think when the crisis that you've laid out very articulately, is that going to be solved or even get close to being solved by building 300,000 social homes in a decade?
Well, the programme that's been brought forward is £39 billion over the decade for social and affordable homes. I would say dedicate it all to social homes or council homes, as people might understand it.
So not kind of shared ownership, not 80% market rent,
I think
council
the biggest
houses.
return comes from fixing and repairing the social and council stock. So we lost 1.4 million homes net since the 1980s. And as I say, that costs the country a huge amount of money because we have to chase rents in the private rented sector through the benefit system. So we lost a lot of control over our costs as a country when we gave that away. But if I look back to my youth, people growing up in the Northwest in the 1970s, so many of my friends, for them, the council home was a massive foundation for everything. The security that came from it, kind of what they wanted to achieve in life was possible with it. And so many young people now just don't have that foundation underneath them. And I think we've lost out as a society so much from not having that housing first philosophy. And I think we need to go back to it. We need to be in a mentality of making sure that everyone has a good, secure home. And if you did that, so many other social benefits would fall out of it.
The one thing I've been trying to find out, and I interviewed Steve Reed a couple of weeks ago, the new housing secretary, and said government's pledged 1.5 million homes between now and the next election. I've been trying to find out for 16, 17 months how many of that 1.5 million are going to be social houses or council houses, and the government doesn't want to say, or doesn't have an answer, certainly doesn't have a pledge to that. For you, do you think it's a mistake not to say we're going to build 1.5 million homes of all kinds, but this many has to be social housing?
Well, I would like to see a commitment there. I've said, I'm on the record of saying I'd like at least 500,000 over the decade, because I think there is what you would call a business case for that. You give people those homes, you build them at that scale, you will create savings in terms of council funding, the benefit system. Young people will be set up more to succeed in education, as I said before. So, there is a clear financial case for building those homes. People say, oh, we can't afford them. Well, actually, can we afford not to repair the damage of the loss of those homes, those truly affordable homes? I think, I would look at it the other way. As I say, I credit the government because they brought forward a programme here that's way bigger than anything we've seen in recent times. What happened here in the kind of 2010 and onwards period is that we were building more social homes than we were losing through the years of the government that I was in, the Blair and Brown governments. Not hugely, but we were just about. But from 2010 onwards, we went into deficit. So we were losing more homes through right to buy than we were building. And we've been in deficit now for 15 years. So only in the last year did 2 of our councils go into a small surplus. So 8 are still losing more than they are building. As a country, if we want to have any hope of getting a grip on the housing crisis, we have to get to a new national tipping point where, as a country, we are building more council and social homes again than we are losing through right to buy. And currently, we're not at that level.
A couple of questions back here in Manchester. I want to ask you what you think about this. And I know you're the mayor of Greater Manchester, not Manchester City Centre, but you can't help it. You walk around this city and then you see the tents and then you look up and you see these skyscrapers, these cranes, often building luxury flats that are completely unaffordable for the families on housing waiting lists and living in temporary accommodation. Do you feel uncomfortable that there's so much luxury property being built here when there are so many people who can't afford a home?
Well, we're building the growth of the city, and we have to invest in, obviously, the facilities and the homes that will bring those new investors to our city and create jobs. But alongside that, together with the leader of Manchester City Council, Salford City Council, the mayor, we've made a big change to housing policy. So what I can say to you is, for the first time in 40 years, new social homes are being built in Manchester City Centre on the old Boddington's brewery site. So if it was just the towers and no other investment, well, that wouldn't be justifiable. And what people don't know is we've operated a housing investment loans fund here, where we've kind of let out loans, and the proceeds of those loans have come back to help us pursue policies that tackle the housing crisis. For instance, we've introduced the Greater Manchester Good Landlord Charter with recycled funding from some of those loans. So we've got a balanced approach, and we absolutely are not a place that would just allow gentrification without any moves to build the council and social homes that we need. But would we like to do more? We definitely would, and we're ready to do more. You know, we would just say that as much as you could give us, we would get on and we would build those homes, because we have to free Greater Manchester from the grip of the housing crisis if we want it to be everything it could be in the future, but particularly to improve the lives of our residents.
Finally, right now, do you have the tools and the resources realistically to end homelessness here?
Some of them. And we are making as much as we can with what we've got, and we're bringing through new thinking, such as the idea around empty homes, making them available to homeless families and kids in temporary accommodation. We've been squeezing every last drop to keep funding a bed every night, and we're still sustaining a bed every night at 600. Nowhere else is doing this, Dan. This is 600 single rooms, basically. We've sustained this since the pandemic, where people don't just get a bed for the night, they get a bed and the same bed every night. And when you give that to people, that is the foundation for recovery. That's the type of homelessness provision, the quality that's there, that then allows somebody to start to recover, get some breathing space and turn things around. So we've got some of what we need, but it needs to be done on a bigger scale. And if more places were doing it with us, then we could end the homelessness crisis. We can't do it on our own. If we're the only place operating at this scale, inevitably, we won't be able to sustain the service for everyone who comes here to seek that support. So I think it can be done. As I said before, it is a fixable problem. I realise the pressures on the government, but there's a big national shift the government said it wants to see in the 10-year health plan, moving from treatment to prevention. This is the perfect policy. This is prevention. If you end rough sleeping, you are taking major steps to improve people's physical and mental health and put them then on a path to recovery. And I think that's what we should be committing to as a country.
My final question is not related to housing. The latest twist in the is Andy Burnham going to be Prime Minister story is you appeared on a Labour Together survey.
Well, it's nothing to do with me.
I mean, look, your name continues to be mentioned. It continues to be put forward as the pressure sort of mounts on the Prime Minister. What do you make of your name still consistently being mentioned? And look, the question always stands. You can end the speculation today if you said I don't want to be Prime Minister, but you choose not to do.
I mean, I'm not putting my name in those surveys, and kind of Westminster does what it does, and I get often drawn in without being involved in it all. And I don't know if it's come over in what I've been saying to you today. The passion I have for this job. I think people underestimate what a wrench it would be for me to leave this job. I've loved this job, everything about it, and I think what we're building here is kind of what the country needs a bit more of. We're kind of using power to get closer to people, place first rather than party first. We're really using devolved power here, and I think because of that, it's devolution that has the energy in British politics right now. So when people always ask me about Westminster, I left for a reason, and what we've built here is the new thing that I think is what we need. I would say in the last 10 years, Greater Manchester has become more and more functional as the country has become more and more dysfunctional. And I think what we need to do is kind of, build devolution out more and more and more, because it's something that is working and it's something that the country needs right now, I would say. So, I mean,
you don't want to do for the country what you've done for Greater Manchester.
I mean,
the temptation must be there.
The thing is, though, it's not my call either. I'm not an MP. I can't stand in a leadership race. It's not for me. It would
Clive
be
Lewis mentioned he'd give up his seat for
other people
you.
in Westminster, wouldn't it, to decide, and whether I want to support the government. I'm here to make a success of this Labour government, and I don't know if people there think could have a role in that in any capacity, and I mean in any capacity when I say that. Then of course, if the call came, I'm not going to, just turn away from it. But I want the government to succeed, and I think the government could succeed by really setting us up to go for it on all of the things that I've been talking about and fixing the housing crisis. Personally, I would say, should become a really clear, dominant theme for this Labour government, and I can do as much, if not more, from here than I can do in Westminster.
Andy Burnham, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.